Welcome everybody. It's again a session for Sparkle interviews. So as you know, we are always looking for directors or directors in Spain, where we try to see what they are doing, how they do this, with the idea to share experiences and to inspire all of our members for learning from this, and hopefully it to contribute also to build up our network. In GUBERNA, there are for the moment 4 subjects quite important in all the programs they are offering. It's resilience, sustainability, board dynamics and innovation. And I'm glad to introduce today Natasha Lippens, who will explain us, I would say, in one way or another, how she is interpreting these 4 topics. It is not the idea to go over everything in detail, but it's spontaneously, when we prepare this interview, that I've seen that many of these things are coming up. So welcome, Natasha, in this interview. As usual, we try to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. And so what is the context in which you decided to execute your mandates? And who are you? Can you explain us a little bit about yourself?
So my mother is Chinese, my father is Belgium, and I'm living back in Brussels since 3 years now, after 22 years abroad. I'm a scientist. I studied biology, zoology and ecology, and worked for the first part of my career in marine pollution, cleanup and response and prevention. And then I did an MBA and gradually entered the world of business. And today I sit on a variety of boards ranging from food production, bioplastics, impact investing funds, real estate, as well as an NGO working on minimizing climate change.
Yeah. Wow. So that's really a kind of total different profile than the old financial director who becomes at the end of his life a director. So, okay, what was your drive to become director, Natasha?
It was in 2009 when I joined Iscal, which is a Belgian sugar producing company, in the context that my family invested in Iscal. And on the board, there are various stakeholders, including other investors, as well as the Boerenbond, which is the Belgium Association for Farmers and Rural Residents.
Yeah. And what's your experience as board member so far?
I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the diversity and the variety. For example, when you sit on a board, you cover topics such as strategy, finance, talent management. And I also really enjoy the variety of the boards I'm on. I think it's very interesting and I'm learning a lot, but also I feel that I can cross-pollinate. So what I learn from one board, I can bring to another.
Very interesting. So Natasha, all these different areas in which you are having board responsibilities, I think you are the right person then to give you a view on what the current impact is of the climate crisis.
Yes, so today the term VUCA is often used, so volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And I think in terms of business, we're going through changes, transformative changes that are similar to the Industrial Revolution. So more than ever, I think it's very important for boards and directors to be inclusive and brave. So by inclusive, I mean what goes beyond diversity, as the changes are transversal across sectors and subjects. It's important to have a diversity of profiles, but as well as a culture able to hear and take into these new or different opinions. And brave because sometimes one has to be courageous and brave if one has a different or new idea, and it can sometimes be very lonely. I think it's courageous because not everybody will stand up with you if you're standing up with a different point of view than the rest of the board, for example.
Very interesting. So for us, big part of my life in multinationals, I think I can use your principles there as well. So thank you for sharing this. We have seen recently an interview in La Libre Belgique, so I think you are now a famous person in the French-speaking part of Belgium, but seriously, what was the content that you shared there?
Well, thanks. So I really enjoyed doing this interview with Valentine Depré and Valentine Van Vive. It was like having a conversation on a very important topic, namely the role of the board on climate change, because I really believe that boards have a strategic role to play in the transition towards a decarbonized world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally right. If I see all the programs that GUBERNA tried to launch around the subject to make us aware about the challenges, then I think it's interesting to see also how you have experienced the partnership between VLERIC, your organization, Chapter Zero, and VLERIC. And what kind of things are you offering, and why you think it's so interesting to follow that as a board member?
Yes, well, I think it's really important to build partnerships, and we have a partnerships with Chapter Zero Brussels, VLERIC, and GUBERNA. So we've organized a program between VLERIC and Chapter Zero Brussels called the Director's Climate Journey. And then there's a second program that's GUBERNA's a governance roadmap to sustainable value creation. And if you complete both courses, one can have the certificate of sustainable director. And I've completed both, and I think it's a really interesting, holistic, but also in-depth way of learning about the role of the board, ESG, as well as understanding the climate crisis and the risks and opportunities associated with this.
Yeah. So that means I follow the part of GUBERNA. I should also subscribe for the second one then. Huh?
If you want to become a GUBERNA Chapter Zero VLERIC Sustainable Director.
Yeah. So Natasha, which competences and skills do you consider as crucial in the role of board members?
I would say it's important to be curious, courageous, humble, and have the ability to do active listening.
Curious, I understood. But why the others?
I would say that the three, so curious, humble, and active listening, are all really linked to this belief I have that directors should be humble enough to understand that they don't know everything, curious enough to educate themselves and to learn, and active listening to be really listening to either other directors around the table or what's going on around them, and not be preparing their response when the other person is talking. And courageous, because sometimes one has to be brave enough to stand up for what they think is right and what they believe in, even if it's a new or different idea from the rest of the group.
And if you have done these characteristics, what do you see as a value add that you can bring in a board?
I think it depends on the board, and it depends on the profiles of the other directors on the board. I think for me, it's probably a combination of being a scientist with some business knowledge, having lived and worked abroad, and having a multicultural background. And I think for certain boards, with the increasing environmental regulations coming into place, having somebody who's had on-site experience of environmental impact assessment could also be valuable.
Yeah. Thank you. And what should you see as this year and the coming, I would say, 2 years as a full topics that should have full attention of boards in, I would say, Belgium or in Europe?
I would say that all topics that make it to a board agenda, if not most, are very important. But today, perhaps what I see too often is sustainability is seen as a separate side topic, where I think it should really be integrated in the strategy of a company. It's really integrated in a whole. For example, it touches upon your cost of capital, as well as setting the KPIs or OKRs of the management team, as well as compliance and risk.
Okay, interesting. And then coming back to GUBERNA, because it's a Sparkle interview, so I have also to ask you, what's your experience with the education program?
So I completed the board effectiveness, director's effectiveness, then I of GUBERNA. Then I did the Director's Climate Journey of LERIC in Chapter 0, and a governance roadmap to sustainable value creation. And I think all 4 of these courses are really useful and important. I would say, firstly, I think it's important for a director to be in this continuous learning state of mind. It's what I was saying about being humble and curious. I think it's very important that directors understand that they are humble enough to understand that they don't know everything, and continuously try and update themselves and learn and be curious. And I think in these types of education programs, one learns as much from the lecturers as the participants. And in these 4 courses, the networking, the discussions, the case studies, the peer-to-peer exchanges were really interesting and valuable.
Yeah. And so you picked away my next question, because I wanted to know how you feel the GUBERNA networking. Is that interesting for you?
Yes, so when I did those 2 first courses, I was in the process actually of moving back to Belgium. So for me it was really interesting and useful to meet other Belgium directors. And I also think it's really important and useful to exchange and hear the challenges, the lessons learned from others, as even though we may be in different sectors, the challenges we face are very similar.
So Natasha, I've seen you studied first a scientist, which I think is very interesting, and then you combine it with an MBA. So for me this is very interesting, because I believe that the world of tomorrow will be managed by people who are multi-discipline, but I wonder what you are using most in your roles.
That's an interesting question. I would say both, really. So as I was saying, in today's world with increasing environmental regulation, being a scientist is definitely very interesting and useful, and ecology has really helped. Zoology, in particular animal behavior, is actually very interesting and useful, even in seeing all the board dynamics and understand how people work. And I think what's often very interesting is actually the frontiers, the bridges, when there's a scientist working with business or physics with philosophy. I often think that that's when very new and innovative ideas come out.
Yeah. So Natasha, thank you very much for this interview. I hope our, let us say, GUBERNA members will watch not only the video, but also listen to the podcast. And I wish you a lot of success and all the happiness in your future roles in board and in your life.
Thanks a lot, Danny. I enjoyed doing this.